third session of the conversation gateways, yes, conversation series to really to bring together practitioners and observers of various martial arts disciplines to really talk about, what we do and, really kind of zoom into more like a cultural aspects of the martial arts practice. And today I'm very, very excited to present the Naginata session with Roche Sensei. We had a conversation with Phil Sensei on the Yabusame, the horseback mounted archery, and the Naginata, the Shuriken, the ninjutsu sessions in the past 2 sessions. And I'm gonna pull up the bio of the Katie Sensei in a second. I have known of Katie Sensei because I believe 2 years ago, we did the first joint performance with other martial arts schools in New York City. And I believe that was actually the very first voluntary event of that nature to really come together and do the joint performances and sort of build a community. And I want to come back to that point later in the session, because I think I want to, we want to continue building the community together. But having seen Katie Sensei's bio, I was kind of blown away. So here you go. Do you guys see the screen? Thumbs up, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So Katie Roche Sensei has been training for over 16 years. And can you really see that? Like 6-time US women's national champion in Naginata. And she not only the headmaster of a group, but she also helped Greater New York Naginata team. And that team got first place 5 times. And still remain the top 3 of the US, representing the US on the women's national team 3 times already, and helped gain 2 silver medals. And she is currently the youngest holder of the rank of 5 dan outside Japan. This is major. I mean, not only, you don't find many Naginata practitioners in the US, but having that much of record, it's impressive. So I hope that the Katie Sensei is already online. Can we see that? Sorry. Yes. Okay, hopefully Katie Sensei is already online. I understand that she was having the sound issue earlier. But so as we, as in the past 2 sessions, we will have the conversation with Katie Sensei, but first, we also want to introduce what Naginata is and what Naginata really represents culturally and historically. And that's how we're going to spend the first maybe 10, 15 minutes talking about Naginata, and we know what it is. And then we go into the questions and answers with Katie Sensei. And I also invite you to, post your questions in the chat section, and we come, to pick up your questions and have more like a lively debate with Katie Sensei. And with that, let me just go to a really short video clip of what Naginata is. And here we go.
There's no sound, Sumi.
Okay.
Midori Tanaka is a grand master of a martial arts school which teaches a fighting style unchanged since the 14th century.
私は9歳から早期である父について稽古しているんですけれども、次の早期になるということで責任が重大だなと毎日ひしひしと感じております。
The naginata is ideal for female fighters. What matters most is skill and... In combat, the naginata is as lethal as the famous samurai sword.
This is the entrance to a samurai mansion. Now here we have some naginata. Naginata are often given as wedding gifts so that a wife can defend the home if needs be. They're on the wall next to the entrance in case of emergencies.
Naginata fighting is still practiced as a sport in Japan. Yet in Grandmaster Midori's school, it's taught the traditional way, designed to kill your enemy.
If a woman had to defend herself, the naginata was an extremely good weapon because the length of the shaft meant that she could keep an opponent at bay who may otherwise have the advantage in terms of strength and weight.
こっちの足切ったんですけれども、もしこっちの足を上げられてもすぐ投げられたら返せるので何回でもいけるんですね。何回でもいけましょうか。はい。何回でもいけましょうか。
Sorry, I think some people might have had an issue with the sounds, but is it okay for now? Did you manage to catch? Okay. So, just to kind of the quick recap of naginata as a weapons and as a martial arts, it goes back to the early 8th century in terms of the historical records. And that is similar to what we discussed earlier, the yabusame and also the shuriken jutsu. Most of the martial art weapons really start around 7th and 8th century, if not earlier. And naginata is also the case to point. The first naginata used in combat situation was recorded around the 10th, 11th century, and that's where it really goes with the emergence of the samurai, the warrior clans. Eventually, because the battle strategies and battlefields move from one-to-one combat, similar to the European context, right? I mean, from one-to-one, the combat with the armored knights into more group-oriented techniques of the gunpowder, the firearms and the massive battles. Naginata sort of receded from the main weapons of warfare into more training instruments. I'm going to show one more the videos from the NHK, and I know this is my favorite series because they really show the really cool techniques of the martial arts to really sort of walk you through how the naginata evolved to become the weapons of choice for women in the samurai period.
Okay, so let's start by looking at the history of the naginata and how it evolved from being a warrior's weapon to a martial art.
This is the Nebuta festival held in Aomori. Floats are pulled through the streets, displaying colorful lanterns depicting famous historical characters or events. One of the illuminated figures holds a special fascination for many visitors. His name is Musashibo Benkei, and here he's holding his weapon of choice, the naginata. Benkei fought many battles. His loyalty to his beloved master is well known throughout Japan, forming the basis of many plays and stories. In Benkei's day, more than 800 years ago, the naginata was very much a deadly weapon of war. One obvious advantage is its length of over 2 meters. This made it very useful for fighting battles at sea to reach enemies on other ships or against adversaries on horseback. As time passed, however, with the development of the spear and then firearms, one-on-one combat was replaced by wider infantry tactics. This led to the fall of the naginata as a practical military weapon. In times of peace, usage of the naginata was revived as a martial art for women from samurai families. It became popular among females because of its length, as they were able to strike with the same force as a man by harnessing centrifugal force. In time, naginata evolved into a martial art with an emphasis on mental and spiritual development as well as technique. Today, many women continue to pass on its traditions. With the World Championship held every 4 years, naginata is now spreading around the globe, combining the competitiveness of sport with the mental discipline of martial arts.
Great. I think the Katie Sensei is actually online now. So, sorry, is my screen still sharing?
No, you good.
You're good? Okay, great. Okay, so with that, I am going to start a little bit of a dialogue with Katie Sensei. So let me start with that. Okay, can I pin Katie Sensei? Here you are. Great. Thank you so much for joining. We went over your bio and a little bit of a history of what naginata is and how that evolved. I mean, as it's like a typical first question is, how did you get into it? What was your introduction to naginata?
Well, sorry about that earlier. I guess tech is a little bit strange, but I guess hi everybody. To answer your first question, I actually first heard about naginata through my maternal grandmother because she did naginata during World War II. She was alive during that time period, and that is when naginata, kendo, judo, even kyudo were in Japanese schools. So she did that as her PE class, which I'm quite jealous of, to be honest, but she talked about it. So I think I first heard the word naginata when I was 11, because at that time I was studying karate and I was studying the bow because I did Okinawan karate. So there's a ko-budo aspect in it. Yeah. So I did the bow. And so when I showed it to her, the first thing she said was, oh, well, Baba did naginata, so I was like, what is that? But then I looked it up with my 11-year-old Google search skills. And I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. This kind of looks like kendo, but you can hit the legs. And that's sort of how I looked at it. And that's how I first found out about it. It was through her. And, I guess I had the curiosity for it, tried to look for a dojo and couldn't find it then. And then I think I was 13. I tried a little harder, still couldn't find anything. And I guess when I was 16, so just finishing my junior year of high school, going on to my senior year, I searched a little harder. I guess my high school research skills are a little better than my middle school ones. And so I found a dojo and then I signed up, and my sensei was teaching on Broome Street. So right in a Soho area. And I said, oh, this is perfect. So, and that's pretty much how I got started.
So you already started in New York City. That's very interesting.
Correct.
And at the time, were there many practicing naginata in New York, or were you really one of the pioneers to really sort of take over?
When I first started, it definitely was small, and it was, I think my sensei had the only naginata dojo in New York City, and it was just, a handful of us. So it was like a little family. And I guess like there are a lot of dojos that are like that, where if you're like the only school there in a particular area, you have a select few good people, I guess you could say. And that's about it. That's all you get to practice with. So it was very small. So maybe about 5 people, not really that many. And I think even before I joined and started Naginata, there still was only a handful of people as well. It's just a handful of good people tend to cycle out. And so that's what happened. So it was small.
Oh yeah, I think your sensei was really one of the only, right? The only or one of the very few people who could teach Naginata in the United States.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So my sensei was Yamauchi Sensei, so Yamauchi Sachiko Sensei, and she was from Ehime. So that's sort of like, I guess, not sure how you could say, maybe the Midwest of Japan, sort of. So she's like off on like this little island on next to Kochi, Shikoku, that area. So it's like being from the Midwest, I guess you could say. She was from there, and then she came to the US when she was a little older. So she was, I think, in her early 40s. And then she was Kyoshi, and she got Kyoshi from the All Japan Naginata Federation. And she came here, and she ended up marrying an American man, and she stayed. And one of her primary motivators to stay here was just to spread Naginata in a different area, because Naginata has existed on the West Coast for a while. I think since like the 70s, like the 60s or 70s, but that's all on the West Coast. There was nothing really on the East Coast. So yes, that's correct. And even today, there's only like maybe 3, less than a handful of shogo holders. So people who are of the teaching rank, the very high ranking levels. She was one of the like 3 or 4. And yeah, that she was. So that's correct.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I understand that Phil Sensei was actually in the session with you when you were starting out. But it sort of goes back to like the sort of how Naginata still like survives, but definitely in decline overall. So, I did a little bit of research, and there are only about like 60,000 Naginata practitioners in Japan, and 90% women. And there are only about 12 schools of Naginata, but many on decline. And you can really count, handful like really active Naginata schools, even in Japan. So, it's really, really, great to have you to talk about Naginata, because it's a rare chance for us to listen and then to hear from you. My next question is like, it's such a large weapon, no? So so New York Budokai, we practice the swords, and as you know, our partners are in karate and aikido. And when it comes to weapons, Kyudo, the archery is pretty large, and we heard from Phil Sensei about the technique of the archery, but Naginata is a bit bigger. So my next question is, what are the challenges, opportunities, the uniqueness, the draws of Naginata as a large blade weapon for you?
Well, I think the first thing I'll start off with is something that I remember seeing in one of those Hong Kong action flicks, which by the way is my favorite genre. So I think I remember watching one of the movies. I forgot the movie, but there was one match where there was a guy with a spear, like a Chinese spear, and he was fighting, I think it was like a Chinese spear, and he was battling against, I think, someone with a broadsword, the Chinese broadsword. And like at first, the guy with the spear had an advantage and was obviously like ahead of the game in the fight. But at the end, he lost. And the first comment, and at the beginning of the match, I think he was talking about how like, oh yeah, the weapon's long, like, you know, I can reach you. I could do a lot of stuff with it. And then at the end, I think like the broadsword guy, when he started to figure out how to fight against this spear wielder, he said, well, yeah, the longer the weapon, the harder to control. And so I think that's something that I think is sort of true. The longer the weapon, you do have an advantage of distance. But as a result, because the apparatus itself is further away from your body, it's sort of like having a very, very, very long, awkward limb, you know? Could you imagine that? That's like a little strange, right? So it's harder to control. Yeah. But the thing with the naginata that makes it very unique and is very different from a spear or a staff, for example, is that the naginata is actually more of a slicing weapon. And that's something I kind of want everyone to sort of keep in mind. The word naginata, the first character, is the nagi is nagiru, which means to slice. Ta means blade, so it's a slicing blade. And I'm pretty sure everyone can figure out what part of the weapon you use to slice somebody with, but that's the slicing part, and you kind of want to create an arc each time you attempt to strike somebody. But the other thing is that you do have the sharp tip, so you can still thrust somebody. And at the end of the naginata, at the butt, there's something called the ishizuki, and in a live bladed naginata, there was a little knife there, so you could also stab somebody with that end. And then the naginata itself was a lot of times like made out of like pure steel in the thing. So you can just go ahead or I guess like metal, let's just say metal. All right. Like, so you could just use it to hit somebody with the staff part. So it's a very versatile weapon, and, you know, it's a very complicated weapon. So you have a lot of different ways to manipulate it. But the problem is, because there's so many possibilities, it could take longer to master.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that so much. I mean, it has that. I mean, I hope you can see on the screen like how the top part of naginata is an enlarged version of that sword, right? There's a similar construction, because as you say, it's not hitting or it's not striking, it's actually cutting, slicing. So there's a blade part, but the main body has the lard. So I wonder, okay, I mean, I'm gonna kind of go into the sort of the feminist elements to it, but as women, to wield such a large weapon, what are the unique challenges that you have to overcome?
See, I think the way to think of it is not as a challenge, but as an advantage. So that's how I think that's the first thing we have to think about. So a female, so I'll just say female, right? So a female body generally, compared to a male body, has a lower center of gravity. That means that's why women in general usually have better balance than men. That's the first thing. So then in addition to that, women have wider hips, okay, and narrower shoulders, while with men, they have wider shoulders, narrower hips. Their sense of balance is different. Not worse or bad, but it's different. Now, the advantage with women is that because the center of gravity or center of mass is lower to the ground, and also they have bigger hips, it's a little more proportionate, the way that their body is constructed and the way that they can like turn their body. It's a little easier to do. So because of that, the kiken taichi, or I guess in a motor learning terms, your body coordination is a little bit, I guess, more efficient. It's a little easier to do with something like a longer weapon. With men, because they have bigger, wider shoulders, and they also do have more of a muscular build on the top and a higher center of mass, they would most likely end up using more upper body strength than the weapon actually needs. You see what I mean? It's not really like a challenge. It's just more like for women and the way that they were naturally built, it seemed to work well with the naginata. And if you have a weapon that is hard to control because it's longer, you need to have like sort of a more controlled and smaller sort of base to sort of have that join. You know what I mean? Because I feel like if you think of like a very long, awkward limb sort of an analogy, think about like a very big top, and then you have like this really awkward, really long thing. That's like a really awkward limb versus like a smaller, compact body that's more balanced with this thing added to it. It's not, you can sort of work more with it. And I think the biggest advantage is that with women, it's easier, or not really easier, but it's more natural. And it's more natural for us to do hip rotations because our hips are bigger. So it just naturally just is easier for us to do. And the balance also helps. So, and the naginata, a long weapon, you definitely need a lot of good hip and body rotation.
You know, it's really fascinating. And as you said, I think it's not only opportunities, but amplifying effect almost, no? Like how you can sort of, use the balance of your body and balance of your weapon and the length of the weapon. So I'm just gonna geek out a little bit. So in our style ryushin that we practice, our sōhei talks a lot about do not rely on your muscle power, but you have to use your whole body from, not only the upper body, but tanden and the breathing, and also like a little sinking down motion. And what you're describing is like the larger the weapon, you actually have to work harder, and therefore you can amplify those different body parts coming together effect even more effectively. It's truly fascinating.
Obvious. It's also just more obvious when you're using too much arm with a really heavy weapon. Like you just get so tired. So you're forced to use your whole body. That's the other thing that I think we have to keep in mind. I feel like with, using a sword, for example, that you can do like a lot of lifts, like weightlifting, and that will help you and that will get everything like much bigger up here. But like, it's just like with something like naginata where it's longer and you could just sort of I feel like it's easier to have your body become one with a longer weapon because you don't need to overcompensate as much to make something in your body stronger than the other. You need to make the whole thing strong and in a balanced and equal way.
It's really fascinating, and I do want to come back to the gendered perspectives of martial arts in a second. But before we go to that, I want to spend maybe a minute about talking about the naginata practice, just so that we kind of understand what you do to learn those skills. Maybe I'm just going to go through the slides a little bit forward, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you practice, what you use as a practice weapon, and so forth. And maybe just pull up the images that you can speak.
Okay. Yeah. So just to clarify, I specialize in atarashi naginata, so new naginata. What I do is the sportified competitive version of what you saw before, and it was developed after World War II. So basically, before World War II, naginata mainly was divided up into different styles or different ryuha. Like think of kenjutsu styles. That's the only way you can learn a naginata is through like different ryuha and mini schools. There was no contact, no competition. And a lot of times you don't use a live bladed naginata, you actually use a solid wood one to practice. And people still practice that today and in that method. Now, what I do is a modern version. And so since it's fortified, we have to use both a solid wood naginata as well as a wood and bamboo naginata. Okay, and the reason the bamboo movements developed was so you could do full contact sparring with protective gear, bogu, and that was developed in the help of, you know, all of the founding mothers of naginata. The founding mothers of naginata, I guess, did other, like the more traditional pre-World War II ryuha naginata, and they wanted to make a more modern version so that like modern age Japanese can still and let me correct myself, modern age Japanese girls can do something that's up to date with the rest of the world, but not forget their Japanese heritage, right? And they thought a more modified, sportified version would make sense. So they developed a way to combine some stuff from all the different types of schools into these more modern techniques. They also collaborated with Kendo Sensei actually to get ideas as to how to do a full contact version. And that's why Atarashi Naginata uses bogu, that's the protective gear. A lot of it looks like Kendo bogu. There are little differences, but you use that. And you only do full contact with the bamboo and wood version. The solid wood naginata is used when we do the advanced katas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm showing the images of the exactly as you said, the bogu that looks pretty much like kendo except for sune, and I think that's the difference between kendo the board and the naginata board. And I also showing the video, I mean the images of you jumping quite high. What's going on here?
That was a pretty jump shot. That's not a real technique. Don't worry. We just did that for the gram. But I just like jumped off the ledge and I was doing a technique, but in the air. That's all for fun. Nothing. I think like some people back when my sensei was alive in high school. So I think she was when high school in like the 80s, in tournaments, a lot of people would jump up in the air to avoid getting struck in the leg. Or sometimes it would strike while in the air. But then what happened was like they, I think, got rid of that rule. And then they're like, no, you have to have at least 1 foot on the ground in order to score a point and strike. So that kind of died off, but definitely a thing.
So you guys still do a tournament and also world championship, and how do you train for that?
Yes to everything. We even have local tournaments. There's a few different kinds of competitions. The official competitions at the moment are the Zen Nihon no Kata competition. So that is a competition where you use the solid wood naginata. Then you have the Engi Kyogi competition. So that is doing another sort of like a kata series, but it's not kata. Think of it more like kumite, yakusoku kumite from like karate. And that's using the bamboo naginata, but it kind of looks like kata. And then you have the sparring version. Those are the 3 recognized ones. Back, I think in the early 2000s and prior at the World Championships, you would have rhythm naginata, which is choreographed naginata. And that was a legitimate competition. And that actually started, during the weapons ban, actually, when MacArthur took over. There was kind of like a capoeira-esque kind of story with that, where they're like, oh no, we're not like doing martial arts, and we're just like innocent little schoolgirls, just like like doing naginata with music and stuff. And that's kind of how that developed. So, but yes, there's just like those competitions, the 2 kata competitions, and like then you have the sparring.
So do you have mostly female students, or do you have a mix?
Question. So basically it's 50-50, I'd have to say. And there are also some non-binary individuals. So yeah, so I got a mix.
Yeah, so that's the kind of the segue to maybe talk a little bit about the sort of the women martial arts and feminism martial arts. I find it interesting in that as much as naginata was an empowerment for women in that they could, defend themselves and also participate in battlefields. It was also training to become, like model female prototype, right, so to speak, in a samurai period. Educate enough, but without independent thinking. Like it was part of the training to fit into the social female, male, gender division of labor, so to speak. And I wonder, like, as a female practitioner of martial arts, how do you experience it? Like, what do you see? Like, I myself, I have to say, like, at times it was never easy really to be, instructor as a woman. So, any candid, thoughts on that would be really appreciated.
I think that, so to give a little bit of background on myself, before I decided to mainly specialize in naginata, I did male-dominated martial arts. So some of them include like karate. I did a little bit of Budo. I did a tiny bit of kung fu, and then I did kendo. They're all male-dominated, and I think, it's different. Like, I think the major difference between like a male dominated martial art versus a female dominated or female-esque martial art is what kinds of gender norms that we see in society, right, are considered the normal baseline. So I guess like, and it's very little subtle things. So for example, one example is when you go to, like, you even see like decorations of tenegui, decorations of furoshiki, bags, merchandise, and equipment. When it's like a male-dominated martial art, like they usually don't even have the option for the feminine colors, right, or feminine designs. It's like no, that's not the baseline normal here. And you, as this like, little marginalized group in this particular type of context, you have to adapt to our thing, which I totally get, right? But in naginata, since it's like a female sort of realm, and the female and feminine things are the default norms, like pink and colors and flowers are normal. Like, it's like, great, this is like awesome, and now guys have to kind of adjust to this. And that's I think the major difference with the both of them. It's like the baseline. And I think also the ability to be able to have role models is very different as well. That changes. I think that when you have a male sensei, for example, you see them as this like head of the household sort of figure, or you see a general, and someone who's just commanding you to do stuff. When you see a female figurehead, you think about your elementary school teachers, for example. Most now elementary school teachers are mainly women. It's a more maternal figure, right? And it's a more nurturing kind of figure. And the kind of relationship you have is more like a mother and child relationship. And it goes in both ways. And I think that definitely changes things, and the comfort in the students as well changes.
Yeah, absolutely. On all scores, it's interesting that I suppose it also changed your teaching style, because you're supposed to, like, bring everyone together and nurture, as opposed to, like sort of top down. And it's probably a good thing that you can probably experiment, both ways, which we can do, but it may not come natural to the male instructors. I'm gonna pick a few questions that come in through chat, which may not be the question related to the feminism and Budo, but let's just get to some questions. And I because I want to ask about later on about the contemporary challenges vis-a-vis the martial arts. So some of the questions coming through chat is, do you teach online?
Yes, I did lead some classes online, and naginata is a bit challenging to teach when in an apartment setting. But if I do consulting as well, where maybe somebody that is from a state where their COVID restrictions are a little less severe compared to New York, I can just live stream there and do it, right? So yes, I do teach online, but I don't have a consistent weekly class going on at the moment. I do still teach at the dojo, and we're just waiting for some students to get vaccinated, and then that's back to normal.
Yeah, I think that's similar for us in terms of the in-person training. And in relation to that, somewhat sort of similar theme is that do you teach, or does Naginata have the form practice as opposed to the sparring practice? So we call it kata, where you sort of have the scenarios of how the opponent comes this way and you're supposed to do this way, just to practice the forms, as opposed to more sparring, real time practice.
Yeah. We have those 3 competition forms. You have the kata competition, you have the kata or kumite competition. So yes, that's a huge part. So it's I would have to say the simple way to put it is that if you're at a typical naginata dojo in Japan, it's about 50% kata, 50% bogu.
Yeah, in that case, yeah, I think it's kind of similar to the sword practice as opposed to kendo, which is really based on the sport practice. Other questions coming through is, how large is naginata? Yeah. Oh no, sorry. Where can I buy naginata? Is one question coming through.
What kind? A live bladed one or a wooden one? Because a live bladed one, good luck. You have to win a Christie's auction if you want a real one. So that's going to be a lot of money. But if you want a good one, if you want a legitimate one, I'm sure there are places online where you can buy a live bladed naginata, but I can't really say that the quality is, good enough to be able to do tameshigiri or the cutting tatami mats. If you are looking for wooden naginatas that we use in atarashi practice and the sparring one, you can buy it on the internet. I personally go to specific contacts in Japan that my sensei has maintained for over 25 years, and I still shop from them. So I go to them directly. So they're kind of those hole in the wall shops that don't believe in websites and online e-commerce sites. But if you are not practicing at a dojo and you just want to get one to try it out, you can buy one at Ibogu. You can buy one at Tozando. Mazkiya, I believe, has one. They have it, so you can just buy one there.
Yeah, I think same for us. I think that those are the to-go places. But I'm very curious about this, that particular shop that you go to. Is it in Tokyo or is it somewhere else?
I go to one place in Kyoto and then another place in Tottori. So then Tottori and Kyoto.
Mommy.
Yeah. So yeah, the Kyoto and those are the God, okay, why are you back? Yeah, those are the sword making places. So I can see, that's the place to go. So yeah, so I think that can address some of the questions that are coming through chat. There are questions relating to can you have a list of the Naginata dojo in the US? Any best books in English on Naginata? Maybe we can sort of answer those questions later on through the email. Because I have one last question for us to consider in this forum, and that is what it means to practice martial arts in the contemporary or current social and political context. We never really, when we talk about martial arts or Japanese cultural, stuff, we talk about historical elements, but we never talk about what it means to actually live through it today. And with the thing about, the rise of, anti-Asian sentiments, to racism, to the sort of political polarization, and the deterioration of U.S.-China relations, all of that, like, how do we take this martial arts practice in today's world, and how do we deal with that, the issues that are really like up to a face? If you have any thoughts, and the discussion points that we can really consider, I'm all ears too.
Well, there's a lot of layers to that question, but I think the first thing I would say is that politics and martial arts have always been embedded with each other since the beginning of time, and there is no secret to that. I mean, for example, with my understanding from what my senpai told me at my dojo is that the reason why there are different ryuhas in different schools, right, even till today, is because those were the schools and the styles that survived in little duels. And what you do is you duel somebody from another school, and if you won, you could recruit those people to be part of your own little political party, essentially. So each type of style, and this I guess could say the same for some of the old Naginata Jutsu school, is that they were all political parties. So if you think about it, it's kind of oh, okay, so maybe one style was the Republican Party sword style, right? And then you have the Democratic Party style. It's kind of interesting when you think about it. And so what they do to recruit people instead of campaigning is you just do duels, and whoever won, you would join it. So that's always been part of politics, have always been part of it. And issues have also been part of martial arts as well. And it's just that the time and place and where you are, the problems or the problems that are taken to light change. So I think one thing right now with everything going on with the Black Lives Matter movement and the hate crimes against Asians and Asian Americans is that I think in regards to martial arts, I know a lot of schools, for example, did not want to post anything on their social media accounts bringing some of these issues to light because they're afraid that it makes it too political, for example. But in my opinion, that's contributing to the problem, because you're not putting to light some of the issues is making people think that you can still act this way and that it's not a problem because nobody's complaining. You know what I mean? I think one good thing about, I guess, some people asking, well, what does race have to do with martial arts, is that, oh, you know what? I guess that's a good thing. Martial arts is now a little more mainstream, that people forgot about all the racial issues that martial arts has had since the beginning of time and even till now. For example, let's if we think about the 60s, right? Remember all those, Bruce Lee could not even star in the Kung Fu series because he looked too Asian. But at the same time, he was fighting with the more conservative Kung Fu sifus, right? About allowing non-Chinese students to practice, because what's the problem? If they want to learn it, what's the problem? Right? And in some ways it's great because it's okay, now non-Chinese or non-Asians can practice martial arts. It's a normal thing. It's not a big deal. So now people forgot about all the hours and all the energy those previous masters used to allow more diversity in martial arts to happen, be a thing. So you forgot that race is an issue, but it still is an issue. And I think one of the things is that if as an Asian American woman, and I guess, and also as a multiracial individual, I think the one thing I would say and tell everybody is that be supportive of the Asian community. Martial arts would not be here without Asians. Let's not forget about that. And signing policies that, prevent like, Asian groups from getting screwed over essentially by policies not favorable to them. I won't get into that part, but that is very helpful. And I think what I would take from Budo philosophies is that the first thing that the Naginata handbook from the All Japan Naginata Federation says in the first line is that the purpose of Naginata is to develop individuals with a balanced body and mind who can contribute good things to society. And that is the mission statement from the All Japan Naginata Federation. It's trying to make you become a good person. And, being aware that having prejudices towards certain races and making assumptions based on how somebody looks is a problem. And also trying to fight for some of those social justice issues is something that you should be doing, and helping is something that you can take from martial arts philosophy and Budo philosophy and bring it into your daily life. And that's my honest opinion. You can't control society as a whole, but as an individual, you can definitely just do the right thing. You can be a better person, and you can make a choice as well. And that's what I would have to say. And I think that with the Asian community in general, there's like this image of Asians being in an invisible like group that, doesn't have any problems because culturally we don't complain about it. And, martial arts training teaches us to sort of suck it up and just do it. And, it's like a benefit disadvantage to that. Right. But, I think that there's a way definitely to do things effectively without like causing too much of a rift.
Yeah, no, yes, I think this is actually a very necessary and fundamentally important questions. Like we are all here because we are drawn to different culture, right? I mean, we have, participants from parts of the US and Europe and other places, and from different racial backgrounds because they're interested in Japanese or Asian culture. Then why don't we do the same, appreciate and respect, other races and culture and so forth. So, it goes both ways. It's not only like one way, like, oh, we really like Japanese culture, we want to go to Japan, but how about, we extend the same courtesy and same, interest into the other races and culture where we live and work. So I find this lack of conversation to be intriguing in that way. It should not be just like hobby and culture and like, interest in food, but it goes both ways, right?
I'm just here.
Sorry, I have. Okay, go ahead. I have a background noise here.
Noise. I guess we have another co-host, right? Yeah.
And I have to say, he watched the Naginata videos up in the beginning, like 3 times, and anyhow. I'm gonna pick some of the questions through the chat in closing. Any thoughts on how male martial artists can treat women martial artists better? That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked. Any thoughts?
The first thing you have to understand is how the patriarchy works. And so once you understand how the patriarchy works and some assumptions made about women, let me just clarify, it's not conscious, okay? You're probably not sexist consciously or on purpose. It's just the way society constructed us since we were little. You have certain assumptions about people for a particular reason. You create a little schemas, okay, for the Psych 101 people. But the thing is, knowing how to deconstruct social constructs like that is, I think, the first step. And I think, you know, you will know how to treat women as another person, you know.
I totally agree. I think even the fact that you asked the question on any thoughts of how I should treat women, I mean, I think that's the first step, because that, you know, unless you ask the question, it means that you never had the question before in your mind. And I think it's a great question. It's a great opening point.
Also, going back to the topic about how it's different to have a female sensei, or, you know, doing a female martial art versus a male martial art. I think one of the differences, and this can also help you be able to sort of treat women better, is knowing how there's some natural anatomical differences, and that there's certain assumptions that women know, that, you know, even I am guilty of this as a female sensei, that, like, for example, women on average are more flexible than men. And there are reasons for that. Like, some people say it's just that women just for some reason have more flexible joints, and, you know, men also have bigger muscle builds on average because of the testosterone. So they literally don't have enough room to lift their arm because they have all these muscles here. There's certain assumptions like that. And I don't realize it. So for me, when I'm like teaching somebody, right, I'm just like, no, lift it up. You can extend your arm. Well, why can't you just do it more, right? But like, but then, you know, for a guy, they're like, I can't. I'm like, oh, you just got to stretch a little bit more. But see, when I thought about it, I was like, wait a minute, no. This is normal for me. This is normal for women and females, right? But if I were flipped out and I was in a male-dominated martial art where there is more upper body strength, for example, required, right, for some techniques, like, I'd probably get some feedback of like, you're not hitting hard enough. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not hitting hard enough? I'm hitting as hard as I can. Like, what is this? Like, but again, probably the impact feels different from a male who has naturally more muscles due to testosterone compared to a female. But they don't realize that, and again, they're not being sexist on purpose. It's just that they aren't aware of the differences, and therefore they don't know how to adapt and adjust accordingly. And some people may take that as offensive. They're just like, this is like sexist, and they don't understand it, but it's not. And, you know, it's just lack of awareness. So I think that's part of it too. Like, for treating women better is just knowing, educating yourself in the differences, and then just going from there. And not be a jerk. Like, I think that's a simple thing.
Yeah, and yes, and absolutely. And it kind of hits me personally too, because I've been told so many times that I've been told so many times that I'm not cutting strong enough. But I feel like, but I'm cutting, you know, I'm sliding through. And how strong that is, as long as I'm cutting through, that should not be the issue. But you see, these are the gendered and also unassumed, assumptions that people make without even realizing what they're saying, right? But what I think when it comes to effectiveness, like, what does it make? Sorry, I'm getting one like loud question. One last question about tenouchi, the hand motion. Oh, I think that's Mitch. I'm gonna call you. How the hand motion of holding or gripping the naginata is different from the sword.
If you want to know how to hold a naginata, the simple way I teach people is shake hands with the stick, and that's your grip. That's it. Done. That's it. And If you want to know exactly how to do tenouchi, there's a few different techniques. My sensei told me some tricks that what you do is you grip the forearm of another person and you just kind of squeeze, 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 squeeze. But it has to be another person because they have to give you that feedback of if it's too hard, too soft, and then using the right part of the hand. She also told me that wringing laundry, that's tenouchi. It's exactly the same. So, but I think the simple answer I would give is like, don't think about it. When you kiai, make it a short, sharp one, and then your hands will naturally grip. You grip starting from your pinky finger and it goes on. And that's what technically happens.
Yeah, so it's very similar to the sword or the kendo. Kendo says the same thing, like, squeeze the water out of the tenugui, and that's what the tenouchi should be in kendo. So
too much. It's subtle, it's just not like, I wouldn't really, I think the one mistake people make when like trying to teach tenouchi is they try to go too much into the breakdown of like, okay, so grip it this way, this finger go, and you don't want it like that. Just like, maybe focus more on the breathing and then just be like, okay. Or the naginata, I feel like is easier to sort of learn tenouchi because you have like the furi orosu, or like the swing down motion.
Yeah.
And you can like, you basically, I just tell them like squeeze each finger from the pinky down and it will go. So that's the way to do it.
Yeah, so there's a question about whether the cutting, the practice with a real one is similar to the tameshigiri.
I personally can't speak for that because I haven't cut with the live bladed naginata before. It's extremely difficult to get, especially a quality one. But it probably is the same, I would think.
Yeah, and I can imagine. Okay, I'm just gonna get one or two more questions from the chat. Where do you put your hands on the stick?
The kata, okay, so first of all, it depends on the length of the naginata because that changes. The shorter the naginata, your hands are going to be placed on the ebu, and it's going to have the shaft and the bladed part be divided in even thirds. For the bamboo one that's a little bit longer, that will make it off balance if you do it directly in thirds. So what you do is you have the back hand that you're using as that pivotal hand to, I guess, be about an elbow, like a forearm's length away from the ishizuki or the butt. And that's the first hand. The other hand is just kind of in front, just like about 2 to 3 fists away from the front of your thigh.
Great, thank you. I think there are a lot of questions about this technical sort of, or the techniques, but I want to pick up this one question from another female practitioner. She says, "I was told by a high-ranked teacher that we need to be more feminine, whatever that means." I want to kind of come back to this feminism and the martial arts, like what the heck that means.
Depends on what critical gender theorists you read, you know what I mean? Like the idea, I think the one thing we should take to note is that the idea and the construct of femininity and masculinity has changed throughout time. So it depends. You could just, if somebody says that to you, you could just ask them, so what time period are you talking about? Are you talking about postmodern? Or are you talking about you could be like real like technical, because what is that supposed to mean? And also what's considered feminine in one culture is going to be different in another culture, right? It's so you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what that means, like, what does it mean even? Because it's I think in this DNA age, right? The identity, how you see yourself, whether it's a feminine or not feminine, whether you're, what Asian race or not Asian, you define and you can express it, and no matter what you get, you kind of have to stand up for it. But so that's gonna take away from this kind of conversation, right? And I'm a bit conscious of the time. So if anyone has any screaming questions, please put in the chat now. Otherwise, I see that there have been many requests for some suggestions for the dojos that you can practice naginata. And there was also some suggestion about the reading materials in English about naginata. So maybe those two are the kind of the homework for us. Okay. One question just came in is, what is the position of a hand when doing fumikomi men? And then another question is, kwando? Does it make sense to you? Sorry.
Yeah, the guando. That's the Chinese weapon that looks like the naginata. It's what Guan Yu like used, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, what do you mean by in fumikomi men at the moment of impact or at the beginning of the strike, post strike? So it's like the
what's the position of hand when doing the fumikomi men?
At the beginning of the movement, at the moment of the strike and the impact, or at the end. Like you see, the hand movement changes depending on where it is. But like if you do fumikomi or tobikomi men from chudan, it starts chudan, and then the ending position is that the pivotal hand, so the hand closest to the ishizuki, is below the navel. So I usually say it's in front of your pubic bone, and then the front hand is about. It depends on the height of your opponent, but I guess the safe bet is like the height of your shoulder. That's it. So kind of like that. It should look exactly like a shomen, honestly. It should be exactly the same as a shomen.
Yeah, no, I think that's that's one of the takeaways, right? I mean, it's yes, the forms may be similar to the sword practice or kendo, but with the weapons and how you wield it, you know, the whole dynamics kind of change and how you use your body. And we never actually got to talk about the kikentai, which I kind of wanted to go to, and you mentioned a couple of times. I wanted to, the dynamics also change, but I'm also conscious of time, so I am going to hand it over to Mitch in a second. But I think personally these kind of dialogues are fascinating, and and thank you again, Katie Sensei, for coming to join us. And this relationship started when we did the joint performance 2 years ago, and we really do hope to continue us coming together and compare notes and having relationships. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Mitch for the last words about the next steps. Oh, and yes, the next session is going to be with Tiki Sharman Sensei about sword making and the sword history. But with that, back to you, Mitch. And thank you, Katie. From personally, it was fascinating.